This is the story of the city of Riverside, Missouri, its 3,000 residents, and the devastation caused by the flood of 1993. Riverside's motto on the sign just above the waterline is, "We take pride in our progress." Indeed, Riverside has grown a great deal in the last few years. Riverside's leadership has been very careful to practice good floodplain management by requiring all new buildings be elevated over the 100-year plus 1-foot flood elevation. The story of Riverside's flood losses is really a story of people. It's a story of Ed Young, who built the Riverside Red X, a local general store. It was built before the town of Riverside was formed. Ed Young and his Red X store saw 1993 floodwaters exceed the 1951 flood. The 1993 flood went as high as the Red X roofline. Ed is a man in his 80s in bad health who is rebuilding, even though he has no insurance coverage. In recent years, Riverside has attracted light industrial growth, primarily in 2 new business parks. The flood first hit the city of Riverside on July 8, 1993. At the time this video was recorded on July 27, 1993, although floodwaters had greatly receded, they still covered portions of Riverside. In fact, 170 of the 225 businesses in Riverside were flooded. At that time, there were 6,000 employees who were either unemployed or who were engaged in flood cleanup efforts for their employer and not able to do their regular jobs. A preliminary damage assessment done by city officials resulted in a finding of losses to individual business owners of over $71 million. This loss equals approximately $27,000 for each man, woman, and child in town. The 3 lumber yards in the city had lumber that floated out onto public right-of-ways, creating a situation which caused a great deal of difficulty in cleanup efforts. Sometimes people ask why people build in floodplains. Well, one answer is many light industrial businesses require both rail and river access. It's hard to find river access except in floodplain areas. Additionally, people throughout history have been attracted to the water for both aesthetic and industrial uses. Riverside's highways, roadways, and railway accesses have been tremendously affected. A 700-foot section of Interstate 635 was completely washed away. Missouri State Highway 9 was impassable for 4 weeks. Other roadways and bridges have deteriorated due to the flood. The main system of transportation for Riverside went from cars to boats. One of the complicating factors for Riverside was the current that was produced by this tremendous flood. The current washed away streets and bridges and left debris in their place. The debris then had to be removed by the heroic efforts of many volunteers and city workers. Riverside police officers became operators of boats, transporting business owners to their businesses and protecting the community from looting. Over the past years, new businesses were elevated in excess of the 100-year plus 1-foot level. The 1993 flood, however, exceeded what was predicted for the 500-year flood level. Vehicles, machinery, and signs were covered by flood waters. The average number of employees affected by the flood is 35 employees per business. Some of the areas here were used as marina sites by the Public Safety Commission. Riverside has consistently prohibited residential building within floodplain areas. However, some areas that pre-existed floodplain ordinances remained. Riverside had to construct 4 alternative roadways for the nursing home and other residential areas during the flood. Riverside's post office was damaged beyond repair by the flood and has now been razed. Riverside's parks were damaged extensively and in such a way that it will make it difficult for the city to rebuild them. In fact, most have been destroyed. One of the most visited parks in Riverside was the Renner Park. The park's shelter has been continuously reserved from June through September for various functions for many years. Riverside's Cultural Theater, which is known as the David Theater, was the home of the Bell Road Barn Players. This historically interesting building was virtually destroyed. The flood of 1993 did provide the city with one thing. Riverside received national media coverage about the city's tremendous losses on such programs as Inside Edition and Good Morning America. The Good Morning America crew, after interviewing residents and business owners, described Riverside as the little town that could.
Riverside, Missouri is learning the hard way how businesses can go under in a flood.
Yeah, I'm 52 years old and I've never seen anything like this.
John Brown's real estate company owns $32 million worth of commercial property here.
In this particular park, there are over 2,000 people work in this park, and this is one of 3 parks that we own in Riverside. We have about 6,500 people that just work in our parks, and they're all out. We bought all the insurance that was available, and it's not going to be anywhere near adequate to repair all of the damage.
What it has done to our city is the destruction of all the infrastructure. Not only all these buildings, our streets, our sanitary sewer lines, all of these things are greatly affected by all of this.
The city story is the personal story of a lot of people coming together at a time of disaster, including volunteers, those traveling through the city, and others giving up vacations and holidays to help with the Riverside cleanup. 4 major breaks in the city's levees were caused by the 1993 flood. These breaks have not been repaired and expose Riverside and their businesses to future flood damage. One question is, why doesn't a city of this size with such a strong industrial base have a major levee? Well, the answer is not clear, since the Corps of Engineers have been planning a major levee for Riverside since the early 1950s. Riverside's story is a story of a city that will recover. The recovery will be a long, slow process. The citizens of the city of Riverside have assumed responsibility for the cleanup, and those citizens are committed to restore Riverside to a city that once again takes pride in its progress.
As the water goes down, we are going to put a plan in place that we will begin with a massive cleanup in this city. Our first cleanup will be the streets and the debris on the side of the road.
And when this goes down, we're going to be in here and we're going to go back to work and we're going to go back into business. We're going to survive this thing somehow.